for Facebook. And we are in the new year. We've changed over the calendar. We haven't gotten together in a while. So as a community, it's still kind of a New Year's theme for today. We're doing a little reality check. So we're going to go back and look at some of those projects you may have sitting around. But in the meantime, pop in, say hello. Happy New Year's from the heartland. I'll say I'm from Iowa, and I'm in the middle of the United States, still in really cold weather. Not as cold as we had right before Christmas, but it is chilly here. Let us know where you're watching from. We love to see where our quilters reside. I know we usually get quilters from coast to coast in the United States. We have a huge contingent up in Canada, and we have a few people pop in from countries overseas. So it's great to hear and see your names. They become very familiar to me. So you are part of my quilt community. I'm not a member of a quilt guild in my area, so you are my community. So pop in and say hello. Happy New Year's to you. So today we're going to go back. We always kind of step back at the beginning of the year and think and review over the things that maybe we have kicking around in our closet, under the bed, in a tote, in the basement that hasn't been finished yet. So then what do we do? Well, the first thing to do for me is I actually need to do a reality check. Sit down and pull out all of those projects and try to make a list of some sort on those, because as you pull them out, you will find you stopped at various stages along the way. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I have, let's see, where should I start in my stash over here that I have next to me? I have those projects that are pieced as a top. Now, this is most of them. There might be a few more hiding out somewhere, but I have projects that the top is done, but I haven't gone on to finish them as a quilt. These are just tops, or in some countries you might call it a flimsy, but the piece top, it has no backing. It has maybe not even binding cut for it, which might cause a dilemma down the road, trying to figure out what to use as binding. But those tops, what do we do with them? And the list is a little bit bigger. If I really want to be honest with you, there are these and this one over here. So they're stacked up quite high. Now, make that list. It really helps to visually see the list. If you're like me, when you're going off to the grocery store, you make the list, right? You make the list of everything that you need to get. Sometimes the list gets left on the kitchen counter when we get to the store, but because we made that physical, visual list, we can see it in our heads. And that helps us to recall, oh, that's right, I have that project. Or maybe we should go through the list and prioritize the list. So this was my idea. Once we get through that, pulling it all out and sorting it, are there things in that pile that at this point in your quilting adventures, you feel, what was I thinking? And why do I still have this? Because I have no desire to finish it, or I've fallen out of love with these fabrics, or I didn't have enough fabric to finish it, and now I've just lost interest completely. And this one falls into that category. Now, there are scraps that I found that match it. I think that it was supposed to be binding, but I don't know for sure. And this project was started, oh my heavens, I think it was right after I got into quilting. So my U.S. Marine, who's 22 and a half, was all of 5 when I did this. So it was practice. I was just getting into quilting. I was trying to get my 1/4-inch seam down. I was trying to sharpen my pressing skills and learning how to join intersections, because there was like a 9 patch in here. So I was really practicing my cutting skills, trying to remember opposing seams so that my intersections would be sharp as pieces came together. I was trying to learn how to mark to make the snowball shape in here. It's a square with little flippy corners on it, so they're triangles. Makes kind of a curved look. I thought that I really liked the Irish chain effect, so these were just 2 blocks or 3 blocks. No, all just 9 patches and snowballs. That's right. That I was just practicing those skills. I had no direction. I didn't have a pattern. I didn't write anything down. I was just picked 2 blocks and was practicing those skills. So in the end, this quilt ended up to be the weirdest shape ever. So I'm trying to remember. It's long and narrow, if I remember right. It's like 40 inches by, so here, I'll hold it up. I'll get really honest with you. It's the long, skinny quilt. It can't go on a bed. It might be able to hang on a wall. But if you notice the colors, that it's a dark, dark green and a burgundy and a mauve pink. Shh, mauves come back. That's how long ago I worked on this quilt. And the fabric is fairly thin. It really wasn't quilt shop fabric. And oh my, as I look at the back, that's not even a 1/4 inch seam. I guess I was consistent enough to get the pieces together, but evidently I didn't know what a 1/4 inch seam really looked like yet. And the stitch length is too long. So beginner quilt, maybe this is one of those you just decide, relieve yourself of this. Maybe this gets cut up into making a bag or a pillow, repurposing it completely. It may not ever become actually a quilt. The fabrics are a little on the dated side. Maybe it becomes a lap quilt for someone in the nursing home. If I really wanted to finish it off, I could do that. Or I can take the swatch of fabric that somebody could use to finish it, and I could roll it up and I could donate it to a place that accepts fabrics, like a Goodwill or a thrift store, and let someone else enjoy the process. Maybe someone else would like to practice their machine quilting on it. It would be perfect because they don't have anything really invested in the piecing and they could just machine quilt on it. So sometimes it's time to just say, you served your purpose. I learned a lot about piecing and pressing, and now I know what a 1/4 inch seam looks like. And I know what my stitch length needs to be a little shorter, and just pass this along and say, it's done, it's done. And it served its purpose. So if there are things that you have fallen out of love with, or you have no idea why you would ever want to finish, let it go, move on, and be done with it. That way you don't have to feel guilty about it. Okay, then out of that stack of things, is there something that you could gift? Like you have a new baby coming in your family. Now, I have a new baby coming in our family, except it's a boy. So, and I'm totally thrilled because in that family, there's only one little boy and he needed a brother bad. So he's got 3 sisters and it's fabulous. He's getting a brother. But of course, when I was working on this project, I was thinking girl. So this started way before we knew that there was anybody else coming in our household. But if you have worked on something maybe that's very generic, that could be boy or girl. Now here's one. This one would fit him, the little guy, better. We got some really bright, cheery primary colors. I made this one out of 10-inch squares, and it's just kind of a crazy quilt look. See, now, instantly, I can say, I have a baby quilt. All I need to do is quilt it. So now what I need to do is mark this one for gifting. Little guy's coming mid-April, so I have about a month to get this quilted. So, and because I didn't put binding with it, because it's primary colors, I can easily go in and pick that royal blue or that emerald color green and do a solid binding. So that solves that. And quilt this up and have that as a priority for a gift. So that goes on the list of baby quilt. Because, as quilters, we're always trying something new, a new technique, a new idea. So if we kind of pick those general colors, we can easily create a gift out of what we have. Okay, we've got people from Arkansas, I believe, Illinois, snowy Idaho. Well, all of our snow melted because we got to 60 degrees one day between Christmas and New Year's, or right after New Year's. It was very strange. So all of our snow melted away, but welcome from across the United States, even where it's snowy. And I'm feeling like it's snowy today. Okay, then, so we have something we picked out that I have a gift item that I can finish. So there's the first, we've taken away that project that I don't know what to do with. I picked out a gift out of the stuff I have. Now, what can we do with the quilt tops that need to be delivered to a long armor? Because before I started long arming myself, my things went to a friend who did quilting. I had a couple of friends who were long armors. My mother-in-law was a long armor. So if it's time to get things delivered, maybe it's time to make that call, make that text, say, do I need to get on your list? Because a lot of long armors are have a list of people that are going to want their services, and you may need to get on that list ahead of time. If you don't have a long armor, maybe check with your local quilt shop. A lot of times they have lists of really good long arm folks out there that you can call and contact. But beware, if you are the first time contacting them, the list might be 3 or 4 months long. I know long armors who are 6 months out. So it's contact them early. Always get on the list if you need to, so that you can, in a timely fashion, deliver that quilt top and the backing for that quilt to them to get it in line to be quilted. Because once it's there, it's kind of out of your wheelhouse. Now it's on to the long armor, and you can be working on something else while that's being quilted. So, but if you're going to be delivering something to a long armor, do you have the backing materials? Make sure that you always provide a large enough backing. And we have discussions in our video archives about how much backing do I need? How much extra around the edges if you're new to quilting? The back always has to be larger because we have to be able to maneuver a large machine over it if it's long arm quilted. If you're quilting it yourself, you don't need quite as much margin, but you do want to have some, at least maybe 3 or 4 inches, just because getting it centered and having a little bit of shift, you don't want the back and the quilt top to be the exact same size, because trying to align them is going to be very, very tricky to get them exact. So you want your backing to be bigger. So make sure you have that backing fabric ready. If you're really organized, you can even cut your binding and have it someplace so that you can find it as soon as it comes back from the long armor. Now, do as I say, not as I've done. I finished a quilt, it must have been 1.5 years ago. It was all quilted. It was trimmed. All the excess fabric was off. All I needed was my binding. I knew I'd made binding. I knew that I had cut it. I remembered cutting it. But do you think that I could remember where I put it? Putting it someplace where you can actually see it. It was the trick, because eventually I did find it. After searching through cabinets, bins, my sewing studio, I turned around because I was thinking, I have no idea. And I turned around and it was in a Ziploc baggie pinned to the wall of my corkboard in my studio, right there in front of my eyes. So if you're in search of something, remember to look at eye level. You've put it someplace where you can actually visually see it. So that binding needs to be safe while you've got your backing and your quilt top off with the long arm. So put that binding up someplace where you can actually see it, because in your head, you'll be thinking, she said put it somewhere where I could see it. Okay. So backing's ready. I have 2 others. And yes, the backing's right here. Has it been pieced yet? That's the big thing. Sometimes we purchase the backing and think, oh, it's ready to go. And then we have to stop and make the backing. And in this case, this is a very narrow quilt, so this backing is ready to go. So here's another one. It needs to go on the list of, can I squeeze it between other projects, because it doesn't have much to finish. This one, the backing is even pieced and everything. It just needs a little love on the long arm. So prioritize those. Right beside them has backing, pieced, ready to go, so that when you get a lull between projects, maybe you loop back and knock one of those off your list. Okay, what do we've got going on? Someone asked which town. I am just outside of Des Moines, Iowa, along the interstate in a little bitty town named DeSoto on I-80. So small town Iowa is right here. I do live near a big city, but I am definitely a small town girl. I grew up in a small town in north central Iowa, and we raised our kids here just outside of Des Moines, small town. So when your town is on an interstate and a highway, you have more gas stations than you have stores in your town. So we have 3 gas stations, a bank, and a daycare. Oh, we have a Dollar General. So we have a few stores, I guess, but in a really small town, which I absolutely love. So welcome to small town Iowa. We've got people from, let's see, Judy from National Quilter Circle website asked, I love the first quilt top that you showed. I don't want yeah, I don't want to finish. Those colors are my favorite. Possible to get that one? Let's connect later, Judy. You maybe have a project ready to finish. See how a community works? So if I don't want to finish it, someone else might. That's what quilters are like. We each have different personalities, and we help each other out so that maybe that thing will become a quilt in the end and somebody can enjoy it. Because the whole purpose of a quilt is to wrap someone in love. So perfect. Good morning from, Manitoulin Island. I don't know if I said that right. I know I've looked it up before, but pronunciations are not my strong suit. So welcome from, and I believe that's a Canadian flag on there because I see 2 red stripes and a maple leaf. So I believe that's Canada. Welcome. Okay, so we've got those things that we're going to let go of. We've got something maybe picked out as a gift out of our unfinished thing. So now we don't have to make a new project. We've denoted which of our projects have backing, which makes it even closer to the finish line because I had put those away and hadn't realized I had backing for them. So now I've got some possibilities to fit in the lull between some of my projects. And then is there one major project that gets priority and you really want to create a completion plan for? So out of the things I have, there is one out of these tops that I really want to complete. This is going to be my next high priority for this year. And this is one of the quilt that I did my very first quilt along with National Quilter Circle. I used scraps from a previous quilt. I added a solid gray and a grunge white. And when National Quilter Circle asked me way back at the beginning of the pandemic, I know none of us want to think back to that time in our lives, but they came to me. I had said something about if the world's going to kind of close down a bit, quilters are going to need something to do, right? We cannot be sitting idle all this time. What are we going to, maybe this community could offer something. And I really wasn't working with National Quilter Circle. It was all new to me. And they came back and asked me, well, would you like to lead a sew along? And I'm like, sure. What's that? So I used a pattern. They gave me a pattern that Ashley Huff had created with National Quilter Circle and said, recreate it in the colorway that you have fabric available. And of course, I had to go literally to my scraps. So all of the prints in this were left over from a quilt that I absolutely loved that I'd made probably a year and a half before, but I had pieces left. And I had the gray on hand and I had the white grunge on hand. So I recreated her quilt using my fabrics in a sew along that then led me to where I am now talking to you. So this is going to take a priority to get quilted because of its significance to me as part of really jumping in and meeting all of you and getting to create wonderful projects every other week and teach some really fun techniques to all of you. So this one's going to take priority for me. I need to then make myself a grocery list and put it in my phone. Sometimes I'll take a picture. Sometimes I'll just put the notes up. I need backing for a 64 by 75 quilt. But this one I will probably take with me to the quilt shop to find a backing for, to try and figure out something that really kind of brings all the fabrics together. The little prints in this are almost, they're kind of a reminiscent of a 1950s reproduction. Not quite. They're a little more geometric than floral. So, but the colorway in this, I'll look for a backing, and hopefully, once I find my backing, I can share with you that I found the back, and then we can follow along the progress. So you all can keep me accountable on my sew along quilt, so that I get it finished this year. Okay, this is my top priority. First one out of my list I want to get done. Okay, we got good morning from Florida. Love it. I bet it's warm down there, sunshiny. I'm working on, someone's working on a 9-patch to throw, a 9-patch throw size quilt, and using the original reproductions feed sacks. Oh, fun. I love reproduction feed sack fabrics. Every, my center square, you keep putting up things, are pretty solid that matches each of the blocks. That's fun. A lot of times when people meet a new quilter or you're in a quilt shop, sometimes people ask you, what is your flavor of fabrics? What do you gravitate to? And somebody asked me that once, and I went, I don't really gravitate to any one thing. I use florals, I'll use geometrics, I'll use reproduction fabrics. I love batiks. I love solids. I'm not one genre. I know a lot of people who will gravitate repeatedly to one genre of fabric, and that's totally fine. But it's kind of nice to know what your flavor is, because then you can mix and match the fabrics that you have in your stash with anything new that you purchase, because they tend to kind of blend together. When you're kind of eclectic like I am, all over the board, you get fabric, and then you have to go look for, oh, where are those reproduction fabrics that I stored away, those 1930s, or is it Civil War reproductions, which are kind of maybe out of style a little bit, but I still love those dark, muddied fabrics of the Civil War era, because it just makes me think of the heritage of quilting. But if you give me a bright batik, I've got a selection of those too. So fabrics can be a little bit overwhelming, and I love the whole palette. So the whole rainbow is my playground. So keep me accountable. Somebody asked me, how's your so long coming? At some point during the year, okay? Because you're my community too, okay? A positive from the pandemic for me is meeting you. Well, that's fabulous. And I am so glad that we get together and keep our sanity and keep moving forward and learn new skills together and enjoy the quilting process. Okay. The other thing, so I got to my priority, my highest priority for the whole year. It might take me all 12 months to get to the end of it, but my high priority, because I've said it out loud, I'm going to make it reality, is finishing that one project for sure. Okay. And then if it needs binding and a label, that's the other thing we need to think about. Those quilts that need, I have one right in front of me that needs a label. Okay. This little guy, which I will show you the other side later, I promise, done, but no label. The other quilt I have laying in front of me, which I want to show at the very end, no label. Got to make sure that maybe even when you're making your binding, start creating your label so that you have it ready to go, because I promise you, if you wait even 3 months, it's going to be hard to remember. And especially if you wait a year to put a label on something of when did I actually make that and when did I actually finish it. So you might have to actually label the quilt with the date you finished it. A lot of times when we date quilts, or if you talk to someone who's archived a history of quilts and things, when it's finished is when the date should go on to that. So the newest thing that happens to a quilt is always the date. It's kind of birthday, because it's totally finished. So think about that when you're making your label. If you're new to quilting and you get something quilted, but now what? It's that binding and labeling. What is that? If all those terms are scary, we have videos for that. So you can look into our free video bank on our National Quilter Circle actual page. So nationalquiltercircle.com. You can go into the browse, look for free videos. you'll find things about binding. So you can step by step, we can help you get that binding created, applied, and finished on your quilt. Because sometimes that's a sticking point. We get to a certain point and then I really don't know how to do that next skill and it intimidates me and I set it aside. So let us help you because we have video that you can start and stop on all the process of getting that binding created and put onto your quilt and finished off either by hand or by machine. We all have different techniques that we like to use. When it comes to making the quilt labels, we have probably 3 or 4 different videos on making labels. So everybody does them a little bit differently, different information's included, different techniques. Some people like to do embroidery on their sewing machine. So they embroider the whole message or the date and names and stuff onto the label and sew that into the quilt. Others like to ink it by hand. So pick a technique that you enjoy, label the quilt because it's really hard later to remember how long ago you've made something. Mind you, I had to search back through photos one time to find a quilt because I was like, oh, it wasn't that long ago. Oh, yeah, it was. I actually looked at the date stamp on the photo to even remember what year it was created. So it's a really nice thing for the future to get that label onto your quilt. So if you haven't done those processes, again, we have videos that will help you with that process. Okay, where are we at here? Some people don't like labels in their quilt, and that's totally fine. I totally understand. I've even gone to making just a little tiny, the label that goes in the back of your shirt, but not as long, just a tiny little one, and just the name of the quilt and the date and put it right next to the binding. So it's just like a little tag that hangs down, not a big label. Because sometimes people want to be able to flip a quilt over and still use it without a big label showing on it. And I understand that. You can also ink right onto the back. You could hide it in a corner, even just the date of when it was done and maybe your initials. So if you want to hide your kind of signature like an artist, you can do that also on a quilt. But it's your quilt and your choice. So that's okay. Tammy from National Quilters Circle website says, my resolution for 2023 is to finish 1 quilt a month. Well, that's fabulous. If I didn't have this job, maybe I could do that one a month. But I think I'll stick with this job and hang out with you guys. And I'll eventually get my quilts done. But okay, so everybody has different goals, and we are totally good at that. 1 a month would be fabulous. I wish I had that much more energy. Great. Okay, we're getting to the bottom of the. Okay, here's the other things we need to slot in. Okay, these are quilts tops that were created different places I worked when I had different leftover fabrics. This one is all batiks. And I created 2 quilts at once. So one of them is on my bed upstairs, but this one is all batiks. So this one looks like flying geese. I was trying to remember what layout I even used. I think this one didn't get finished because it's not big enough yet. So I need to go back through my batiks and pick lights and darks because as you notice, each one of the flying geese has a light matched up with it. I actually did this as half square triangles, not as flying geese. I should be honest because I didn't know my layout yet. It would have been easier done as flying geese, but because I didn't know what direction, I was just having fun with half square triangles. I did pairs. I paired a green with a light green, a dark brown with a golden yellow, so that each of them had light darks because I was playing with value. So you can see some of them are higher contrast than others. And I think I'm going to end up making this one larger because I really do love the batik fabric, and I do have a collection of batiks. So this guy is going to get set aside for expansion. Okay, this one is all, I think it's modern Christmas fabrics, and it was large hourglass. I was playing around with big triangles. There's little snowball or little flippy corners in it. I forgot what I did on it even. Those little white piece that comes together. It's just a Christmas throw. It's got snowman on it, snowflakes, words and stripes. I was playing with a whole set of fabrics. I think these came from a set of fat quarter bundle that I acquired. So this just needs some fabric. Oh, I just thought of something. I have a cuddly, fleecy, not fleece, but a plush fabric upstairs that I believe is the right color. Okay, later I go upstairs and see if he's got a back already laying upstairs. I just thought of that. It came from somewhere else, but guess what? I can marry them together and I can finish that off. My daughter-in-laws keep wanting to steal my quilts that have plush on the back. So I will have to finish them off with plush and get them for Christmas for next year. Leftover triangle squares. We always end up with leftover triangle squares. This was made leftover triangle squares from the quilt back here. Imagine that. So these two are cousins. They have the same fabrics in them. Leftovers, triangle squares. Whenever you're trimming things off, and sometimes you feel really guilty about throwing away all the extra pieces. So I kept them. And I created these little star blocks that are really small. They are only, how big are they? I remember starting out and thinking, what were you thinking? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5 inches. Because they were kind of wonky size, they were all trimmed down. And I know that a bunch of you were doing the mystery quilt for New Year's Eve, or the New Year's Eve mystery quilt. And you got into doing a whole bunch of triangle squares. And some of you felt a little overwhelmed. Remember, it's a process. It doesn't have to be done right away. Some people will race ahead and have a completed quilt. Others of us like to take our time and do a little at a time. So that's what these little guys were. These little triangle squares were trimmed down to like 1 inch and, oh my, they are small, 1.25 inches. Okay. But I still didn't want to throw them away. So this will probably become a table runner, who's the cousin of this quilt over here in the background. So got to finish that one eventually too. These others are different stages of maybe they will get relieved and passed along. This could become a baby quilt. I was playing again with 5-inch squares and half square triangles. I love triangles. Can you tell? Kind of a carpenter star kind of thing. This would be a little cute little girl quilt actually, with maybe a bright yellow or a rose colored plush fabric on the back. So I guess I need more girls in this household. So eventually it could be a wall hanging also, but probably the next baby girl quilt that come along. I've got this is a table topper. You know, these little projects, when I get a lull between, will get finished. This one even has its backing already sandwiched with the fabric, and I need to determine how to quilt it. So make that list. Relieve yourself of the things that are, I don't know what I was thinking, I don't want to finish. Pick something out of there if there's a gift you need to make soon. So a little kid's quilt maybe, or if there's a wedding coming up and you have a top that you were just practicing on, maybe that's going to be that wedding quilt. Set that as a priority. Pick one big project you really want to finish for the year. My sew along. I'm not kidding about you guys keeping me honest to finish that. And then determine what backings you need so that you step forward in the process, make another step, make sure that you get the a backing and a binding. Call that longarm quilter if you need to, like, I can't quilt this myself and I need somebody to do it for me. There's nothing wrong with it. We are a community. We work together to finish projects. Make that contact, get it going, and then figure out what just needs binding or a label. Sometimes there's a quilt sitting and all it needs is the binding to finish it. So that will help you visualize a plan for the year, okay? So I'm going to show you the one big quilt project. I made a list last year. I made a list. That list was kind of long because those things were all on it, but I wanted to honestly finish one project for the year because I didn't want to come back to you and say, I didn't even keep any of my goals. So I prioritized. I got one quilt finished. This is the quilt, the fabric I purchased when I traveled to Bali with Craft Tours. It was my first step into National Quilter Circle. They sent me to travel with quilters to a foreign country. How wonderful is that? And I purchased, we got to go to a batik factory. I purchased the bright colors that are in here. They were a set of pre-cut strips. And when I got home, I thought, what am I going to do with this? I had also purchased both of these because I thought these two fabrics would go great and highlight the pre-cut strips. So I had pre-cuts and 2 chunks of fabric to work with. And I bought the light when I got home because I had no plan what I was going to do. So I bought a light to offset all these bright colors. And Bali Breeze became a quilt that there is a course for this. I think it was maybe a platinum level project, a platinum live project. So Bali Breeze, if you're looking for it in that category, it got quilted. I don't know if I can hold it. It is queen size. So it did take a while to get finished. If I can hold it up so you can see the quilting in there. It's swirls. I wanted it to be like the breeze on the beach in Bali, where it's just warm and delightful at all times. So it just has a very flowing, curvy, because everything's very angular in this quilt, a kind of a breeze blowing through the trees and the flowers. So Bali Breeze was finished off just a week and a half ago. So I did meet my goal of finishing one big project. And as soon as it's warm or warmer weather, I will put it on my bed upstairs. So one big project finished. To finish off our setting goals and the reality check of what we as quilters need to maybe prioritize for 2023. Of course, there's always new projects. And I'm going to give you the teaser of in the past, I've done some projects that were gemstone named. We had Emerald Eyes, Shimmering Sapphire Shimmer, my own names, and Topaz Treasure. So we've done a green, a blue, and a yellowy gold color. So of course we need more gemstones. Everything that glitters. So this is going to be our next live project. It's called Radiant Ruby. And we are in the same process. It's all about placement of lights and darks and values. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about lights and darks and placement, texture, scale of print, and how that affects our finished project when we're done. So I'll bring in the other table toppers that I've made. So Radiant Ruby will be our next live event. And we're going to really delve into that because I know a lot of us, as we get started in quilting, our biggest question is, I'm not sure of my fabric. I don't know if I'm going to get enough contrast, if I'm going to see my piecing, or if it's just going to all kind of meld together. So we're really going to talk about values, scale of print, and all of that in our next live. So join me next time, January 24th, for the Radiant Ruby project and learn a little bit more about fabric selection. We've got lots of really great conversation going today. I know I didn't have enough time to answer all questions and shout out to everybody, but you know that I will go back into the conversation and I will chat with you after the show. So thanks for joining me today. I'm Colleen Tauke with National Quilters Circle. Thanks for joining me today.